Big story here on India Today. Let me take you straight to the latest developments that are coming from the line of actual control. The LAC troop disengagement at the true friction points in eastern Ladakh has been completed. The verification of the disengagement process is currently underway by both sides, by India and by China. Now, coordinated patrolling modalities are to be worked out between ground commanders. That's a very, very major development that will take place. It's at the level of ground commanders, which is at the level of brigade commanders and commanding officers in their respective areas of operation. They will decide what the modalities of the patrolling are. The ground commanders are officers of the rank of brigadiers and colonels. Top army sources are telling India Today, and what we can also tell you, that after the 2020 friction at Galwan and Pangong Tso, tensions were very high. But now, sweets will be exchanged. It's Deepavali tomorrow. It's the biggest festival we celebrate in our country, and sweets will be exchanged by soldiers at the line of actual control at the two friction points, Depsang and Demchok. Before I get you more on the story, let's quickly cut across and listen in to the Chinese ambassador talking about disengagement and the road ahead.
Now that the two leaders have reached many important understandings, that will be the guidelines for the further development of our relations of our two countries. And I just hope that under the guidance of this consensus, our relations will be moving forward smoothly in the future, and our relations will not be restricted or interrupted by specific disagreements between our two sides. Because as two neighboring countries, it's quite natural we have some differences. The most important thing is how to handle and solve these differences.
So you heard the Chinese ambassador there, a conciliatory tone. I want to bring in India Today's Shiv Arur for more on this big story. Few people understand the intricacies involved at the line of actual control better than India Today's Shiv Arur. And Shiv, the disengagement has happened. Very important verification process. And it's the ground commanders that will decide the patrolling modalities. Shiv, bring us details. Also the fact that sweets will be exchanged at the friction points tomorrow. Very, very critical.
That's right, Gaurav. We can confirm now that the complicated task of disengagement after all these years in Depsang and Demchok has been completed. This is a very small forward step, but it is a significant one because, as you've reported from there, Gaurav, one of the few reporters who's actually been there, you do know that disengaging from here has been a very, very stubborn, almost irresolvable issue for more than a decade now, and therefore for the troop pullback to actually take place so quickly after that agreement is something that must be commended. Let's obviously put in the usual disclaimers, Gaurav, that this is the first baby step towards a much larger mountain ahead of challenges before any semblance of normalization can actually take place. But the next step will be the other sticking point and the tricky issue of patrolling. As you and I have both reported since 2020, it is clashes between patrols on both sides that had led to a spiraling escalation in hostilities, especially in places like the Pangong sector and in Galwan, leading to the overall, friction points and the standoff between the two countries. A resumption in patrolling in two places where patrolling has not been taking place for over a decade now is going to be a tricky issue. The modalities, the terms of reference, the rules of engagement, new protocols perhaps will have to be decided at the tactical level by the unit commanders who man the front lines, which have now pulled back. About the exchange of sweets, I have, slightly mixed feelings about that. I think it's a bit of an overkill, but I think the fact that it's Diwali, the optics needed to be there, perhaps is the reason why both sides have decided to have some kind of a symbolic friendship gesture on both sides. But I don't think that's going to seep into the professionalism with which the Indian Army is really going to be approaching what happens next, Gaurav.
Oh, absolutely, Shiv. And is this restricted for the moment to Depsang and Demchok? And if this works out, will it also then be extended to the eastern sector, to Arunachal Pradesh, where China is also extremely keen on disengagement, especially around that Yangtze, that entire area? Tell me more about the northeast now. What happens there next?
You know, Gaurav, you're right. You're absolutely right. In places of the Tawang sector, Yangtze and the Asafila sector of Arunachal Pradesh, where the Indian army had taken on very, very advantageous positions that threatened Chinese, positions, Chinese infrastructure as well, has been a thorn in China's side for quite a long time. And, we've seen a trickle of videos that have come in over the last couple of years of clashes that have taken place between India and, the Chinese forces in Tibet. And therefore, China has been very keen that a disengagement of the kind that has taken place in Depsang and Demchok also happens next in the eastern sector. Our understanding is it will happen, but it will happen much more slowly. India has made it clear under the terms of the agreement that things will happen in very, very small steps and very, very small phases. First, they will look at Ladakh. Next, they will look at Arunachal Pradesh. But only after the verification is completed and a resumption of patrolling starts in Ladakh, in Depsang and Demchok, only then will both sides start looking at what's happening in the Tawang sector of Arunachal Pradesh, Gaurav.
Shiv, keep tracking that story. I will come to you for more, but this is a very critical first step that's been taken, disengagement. When it comes to de-escalation and de-induction, there is a lot more that India first expects China to do to rebuild trust at the borders. Yes, there are differences. Yes, those differences have to be managed, but they have to be managed from a position of strength on either side and not looking down upon any of the two sides that are engaged in this. So Shiv and I and our entire team will be tracking this story very, very closely.